the heart of His Holiness's teachings is the belief that all faiths, scientists and atheists included, bear the same heart and ought to work together, ought to find a way to find compassion together. I should tell you, I was working, but the calm that's here in this room right now was not here yesterday, and Walter knows this. It was a little hectic, and I was sitting back in a room working with two people, trying desperately to figure things out, and anxiety was rising in the room, and Rajiv Mehrotra walked in, and it just cooled right down. Now, this may be because, in part, for 30 years he has studied with His Holiness, and that gives him a great opportunity to learn peace. But I suspect it's also because he is a wonderful educator and innovator, a teacher and author, and he is working with His Holiness as the trustee and secretary of the Dalai Lama Foundation for Universal Responsibility, which was funded by the money that the Dalai Lama received from the Nobel Peace Prize. Central to the work of the foundation is bringing faiths together. And here to introduce the leaders, Rajiv Mehrotra.
Your Holiness, as a countdown to your visit and to prepare and sensitize the people of Louisville to your ideas and philosophy, and above all, the principle of compassion, the Center for Interfaith Relations here organized a festival of faiths, and there were numerous discussions and events around the issue of compassion. You, of course, embody compassion. Though you deny your divinity, people ascribe to you the fact that you are the reincarnation or an incarnation of Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha aspect of compassion. You have also very remarkably, beyond the discourse and dialoguing on compassion and on interfaith dialogue, you are amongst the few religious leaders in the world who have actually engaged in the techniques and practices of other traditions. So you have had the courage to go to a mosque, wear a skull cap and perform the namaz, to go to the church and sing Christian hymns, and you have been to Sikh gurdwaras, you have been across the spectrum of religious faiths. And we found that in the discussions, we kept turning back to you, to your philosophy, and to your inspiration. And I wanted to express, on part of all the participants at the dialogue, and it was my privilege to moderate most of the sessions, our deep gratitude and appreciation and celebration of the inspiration that you provide and the example that you set for the highest aspirations of the relations between traditions. Before I invite the members of some of our speakers to offer their comments and their insights on the experiences and outcomes of the dialogue, I should add that it was a meeting, ultimately, of the converted. And it was a meeting where, at the metaphysical level, there was the feeling of complete unity and of agreement. But in the everyday experience of interfaith engagement, that is not always the case. And I think that we would look to you for advice, for a word of guidance as to how we can move from the rarefied atmosphere of the converted talking to the converted, of at the most going to the limits of differences in nuances at the metaphysical level between faiths. But our everyday experience for most people in most situations of conflict is that of difference. Your Holiness has worked very hard in developing secular protocols that can be used to train people in compassion, both young and old, in a sense independent of any particular faith. But you will recall that in India, where we have so celebrated inclusiveness, there was a resistance from religious leaders themselves who felt that, no, values must piggyback finally on faith. So before I invite our speakers, perhaps if you could offer us some advice and thoughts on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We were hoping that you would give us some advice before we started speaking. This was, how do you reconcile differences that go beyond the more metaphysical spaces of union and harmony that religious leaders feel, and the dialogue between the converted?
I think each different tradition, there are some different sort of way of approach or different concept. That's actually, each one has some kind of its own beauty, something. So sometimes I telling people, like garden, if just one type of flower, same color, may not be very attractive. Even I think a butterfly or this fly, I think loves more different color. So you see, different concept, different way of approach is, I think, more attractive. So therefore, it is important to keep one's own unique thing. But then all aiming better human being, sensible human being. So that's same aim. So all focusing that while you keep your own unique thing. That's my view. This is my concept. That's my view. So therefore, sometimes some people told me, sometimes it's a conflict, not only in the past history, but even today, some conflict with the name of religion. So some people fed up. So better create new religion, universal religion. Some people used to say that, or suggesting, or indicate that kind of sort of feeling. Then I always say, oh, keep different traditions is much better. So its own unique things. I don't know whether it's appropriate or not. Sometimes I sort of mentioning, I expressing, like a supermarket. If just one article, then it will not be supermarket. And restaurant, morning, noon, evening, same dishes sell. Then customer, I think, will be reduced. So variety of food, different kind, then more people come. So similarly, food of spirituality, food for mind, or food for emotion. There are different people, different sort of, because of the level of these sort of emotions. So we need different way of approach. So that's my view. So it is much better, keep one's own tradition, provided respect other. That's very important. Now here, one thing, the concept of one religion, one truth, and concept of several truth, several religions, itself contradiction, cannot go together. But then, in terms of individual practitioner, one truth, one religion is very relevant. In terms of several people, in terms of community, automatically, then several truth, several religion is very relevant. Now here, you see, in terms of group of people here, then naturally, several truths already there, several religions already there. But each individual's own home, then one truth, one religion, and practice faithfully. When we together, if I'm Buddhist, in my own prayer, my own meditation, yes, Buddhism, one truth, one religion. Then that view carry when I meet these people and I ask everyone, oh, you should follow Buddhism. Buddhism is the best. Unrealistic. Then eventually quarrel. That's past history. You see, happened that one time in India, one American television team, which television? I don't know. I can't remember. Say about religious harmony. Then that interviewer, you see, one question about past history, the religious harmony. Then I told that person, don't ask that. If you go past history, then a lot of conflict in our religion. Then though used to recall these things. Now, for example, Buddha Gaya. I think there are some Muslim community there. I think their ancestor, many centuries ago, when they came there, I think for destruction of the Buddhist temples or like that. That's past. Now today, most shopkeepers are Muslim, and also their own school. So many times when I pilgrimage Buddha Gaya, that small school, Muslim school, they invited me. And also, you see, few occasions I also made some donation. Every time when I visit there, they give me very, very delicious tea. Wonderful. So the most shopkeeper Muslim, but customer Buddhist. So more Buddhist pilgrim come, the customer more successful. Customer money, the business more successful. So very friend now. Now Buddhist pilgrims, Buddhist pilgrim need Muslim shops, more Muslim shops. Muslim shopkeeper need more Buddhist pilgrims, like that. So now, that's today's reality. So we have to think today's reality. I think today's reality, much healthier because of much communication. In the past, sometimes you see, each believer more or less isolated. So then sometimes distrust because you remain a little bit distant. So then sometimes unnecessary sort of because of the doubts or fears, you see, sometimes happen. So now these days, you see, they're much closer each other, much contact. It's very, very useful. And India, I always say, telling, India is the model. All major world religions follower live together. Occasionally some problems here and there, but basically wonderful. So since that over billion human population country, all major world religious traditions can live together harmoniously. So why not? The other part of the world can develop genuine harmony, mutual respect, mutual understanding. So genuine sense of spiritual brotherhood, sisterhood. I think very possible.
Your Holiness, in this age of science, science is represented by Dr. James Doty, and you are the founding benefactor of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education at Stanford University, of which Dr. Doty is the founder and director. As you know, he collaborates with scientists from a number of disciplines examining the neural basis for compassion. And much of the work at Stanford is developing into the compassion training protocol that I alluded to. Dr. Doty.
How is everybody? All right. What a wonderful joy, and thank you, Your Holiness, and all of you. I'm not sure if many of you know that His Holiness, for over 2 decades, has had working with neuroscientists because he's had this incredible interest in how mind training or meditation affects the brain. It is this work that has shown not only the power of compassion, but its profound effect on the giver as well as the receiver. It's interesting because oftentimes people quote Darwin by saying it is survival of the fittest, but in fact, what he actually said, and what science has now proven, that it is actually survival of the kindest and most cooperative if a species is going to survive in the long term. In fact, it has actually been shown that being compassionate is the default mode of humans and most species. Often in our modern Western society, with its various demands and distractions, it is often difficult to maintain this balance. But what is amazing is that scientists have now shown what His Holiness has always known and what many of the contemplative traditions have already told us. We know that with mind training, we can actually change how our mind works and return us to that default mode. And when that happens, extraordinary things happen. Not only does one relate better to those around them, but one is happier. As one example, with as little as 2 weeks of mind training focused on compassion, you can decrease your blood pressure, you can have a profound effect on those stress hormones that many of us have, and in fact, you can even find that your cardiac function is improved with as little as 2 weeks of training. Science has also demonstrated that when one cares for others and is compassionate, extraordinarily, but perhaps not surprisingly, one's longevity is actually increased. Indeed, it is our default mode. It is through compassion that I believe that that age-old question of what is my purpose and why am I here is answered. We, as a species, evolved to care, and we care because it is deeply ingrained within us by the knowledge that we are all interconnected and we are all interdependent and we are all one, and all is sacred. Thank you.
May I introduce Your Holiness to Swami Atmarupananda, who joined the Ramakrishna Order of Monks at the age of 19 and has been very active with the Snowmass Interreligious Conference and is currently living and working in Belur Math, editing the new edition of Swami Vivekananda's collected works.
And greetings to all of you. True compassion doesn't mean pity for the unfortunate from a position of superiority. Of course, pity is far superior to hard-heartedness. But real compassion means a loving identity with all beings, with all that exists. Seeing myself in others and seeing others within myself. In our ignorance, that is our spiritual ignorance, we see ourselves as separate from others, separate from the world, separate from God. And this is a state of alienation. That's the source of our attachment, our anger, and our fear, all of our negative emotions. So loving compassion draws us close to who we really are, our real identity, which is identity with existence itself, existence with other beings, and our identity with God. And that authentic identity is found in the silent depths of our own being, beyond separation, beyond alienation, where there is simply an unobstructed oneness of being. And of course, we have to start where we are. And so we start with acts of unmotivated kindness wherever we find the opportunity. And in that way, we learn to incorporate the whole world into our being. Thank you.
Also representing the Hindu tradition is Siddheshwari Devi Ji, popularly known as Didi Ji. She's the founder of the Radha Madhav Society, a non-profitable charitable organization in the United States, Canada, and Trinidad. And this functions under the auspices of a remarkable teacher and Jagadguru Kripalu Parishad. She continually strives to deepen the average common person's understanding of the Vedanta.
Dear brothers and sisters, Namaste. The timeless Vedas state that the individual souls are eternal, part and parcel of the Supreme. According to the laws of nature, every part desires its whole. For this reason, every soul naturally desires God and godly qualities such as compassion, mercy, gentleness, and humility. Hindu scriptures explain that although each individual soul is a part of God, yet we have been eternally forgetful of our true nature. We have eternally identified the self to be the material body instead of the divine soul. This illusion has given rise to our lower nature, which leads us to become selfish and egoistic. By recognizing and accepting the self to be the soul, we claim our spiritual heritage as divine children of God, whose true nature is to be compassionate not only to humans, but to all creatures. At the practical level, the Hindu clasps his hands, bows his head, and says Namaste while greeting others. Namaste means, I bow to the divinity within you. Namaste.
Rabbi Arthur Green, PhD, is rector of Hebrew College's Rabbinical School and is recognized as one of the world's preeminent authorities of Jewish thought and philosophy. He also serves as professor of philosophy and religion as professor emeritus at Brandeis University.
Your Holiness, circumstance has conspired to force me to address you spontaneously. We were each asked to write a brief statement about compassion before we came here. I am a good citizen and wrote it and did not remember to bring it with me. Somebody said to me this morning, don't worry, I have a copy, and they forgot to give it to me also. I can only do what rabbis do. It is our custom to read our scripture in a cycle. Every week, we read one portion over the course of a year. Yesterday, we read the passage of the blessing of the priests, which many people here know. May the Lord bless you and keep you. That passage asks that God's face shine its light upon you and give you peace. You, for many years, have been receiving that light, that great light that comes from the face of the One, and have been shining it out to many people throughout the world and creating much peace. We ask that the radiance of God's light continue to shine upon you for many years to come, and that you will help lead us all toward greater peace. Amen.
Father Richard Rohr is a globally recognized ecumenical teacher bearing witness to the universal awakening within mystical and transformational traditions. A Franciscan priest of the New Mexico province and founder of the Center for Action and Contemplation in New Mexico, which is home to the Rohr Institute, his teachings are grounded in the practice of contemplation, expressing themselves in radical compassion, particularly for the socially marginalized.
A blessed Pentecost to all of you. For the Christian who has gone to their own depths, which is not all of them, I'm afraid, there is the uncovering of an indwelling presence, which might even be experienced as what Martin Buber calls the I-thou relationship. In Christian theology, this inner presence would be described as the Holy Spirit, which is precisely God as immanent within and even our deepest self. Some saints and mystics have described this presence as closer to me than I am to myself, or more me than I am myself. Many of us would also describe this, as Thomas Merton did, as the true self. It must be awakened. It is never created by our actions or behavior, but it is naturally indwelling, our inner being with God. Culture and even religion often teach us to live out of our false self, of reputation, self-image, role, possessions. It is only as this fails us, and it always eventually does, that the true self normally stands revealed and ready to guide us. The true self does not teach us compassion as much as it is compassion already. And from this more spacious and grounded place, one naturally connects, empathizes, forgives, and loves just about everything. In the Christian language, this is God in me loving God. Because the false self does not know how to love, in a very deep or broad way at least. It is too small. It is too self-referential to be compassionate. The true self also does not choose to love as much as, again, it is love itself already. Loving from this spacious place is experienced, as Jesus said, as a river within you that flows of its own accord.
Professor Syed Hussein Nasir is a professor at the Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and a scholar of great eminence in Islamic studies, in particular in terms of the issues related to the environment. He has written extensively, more than 500 articles, 50 books, and is a deeply celebrated Sufi practitioner and scholar.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of God, the all compassionate, the all merciful. I've had the great joy in this life of having known His Holiness for over 50 years. We met on many continents, had many discussions, and I came to Louisville, especially to have the joy of being in His presence, even just for a few minutes. Thank you very much for coming here. It's in reference to His spiritual function and reality that the few words I have to say will begin with this fact, that all authentic traditions, religions, all integral spiritual paths consist of the two dimensions of truth and presence. Without truth, presence can be the presence of anything. It has no efficacy spiritually. And without presence, truth cannot be in our life. It's absent. The bodhisattvic function of His Eminence and His Holiness represents, in fact, the presence of mercy, of compassion, which is always bound to the truth. And in order to benefit fully from what He says, we must always carry it within us with a dimension of truth within, and not to let the presence alone be there for a while and gradually wear off. We can best benefit from it by paying attention to truths which underlie what seems to be very easy advice that He gives. We have spoken during these few days of something which He has practiced all of His life, solitude in combination with meditation and prayer. There's a very famous saying of the Prophet of Islam that says, there was God and there was nothing else but Him, which alludes to sacred solitude, sacred silence before creation. And Muslim contemplative Sufis have added, Al-an kama kan, it is now as it was. That even now there is that sacred silence, there is that holy silence. It is here and now. We should return to it at the moment of death. For the spiritual person, that death is practiced here and now. And that's what really the contemplative, the inner life means. That's what he has dedicated his whole life to. Now, it's really easy to practice compassion if only we know who we are. The difficult part is to know who we are. According to Islamic metaphysics, God breathed with a breath of compassion upon the possibilities of existence, and everything came into existence. So the very substance of all things is compassion. We live in compassion, we die in compassion. The trouble is that we have imprisoned ourselves in our egos. The door is open to get out of the basement of our existence into the higher reaches, but very few of us tries to do so. But the door is always open. And once we open the door and realize who we are created by nature to be compassionate. Without compassion, we are not fully ourselves. Without compassion, we cannot be happy, we cannot love, we cannot exist as we should. And therefore, at the end of all this meeting, I pray that may the Bodhisattva continue to manifest His presence through His Holiness for many, many years. He has done so much to make us aware that without passion, without compassion, we live below the level of our existence. And that compassion does not embrace only me and my family, only our town, only our state, only our country, only our religion, or even only humanity, but all of creation. Compassion for every bird that flies in the sky, and for every fish that dies in the waters because of our polluting it and destroying it. Compassion today applies to the future of our own existence on earth, and it will continue like this. Without compassion for all of creation, we will not be around to hold conference in Louisville for very long. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just one more time, our appreciation to these faith leaders who reach across a great divide to find those things that bind us together.